Well, I've actually left my cave. In the mornings, I get up and it's early dawn, and I have a desk for writing and a desk for drawing. And actually, I sort of like the drawing the best. And I work, and the next thing I know, Letterman's on. So it's just the most exciting adventure. I've had 10 books, and believe it or not, it's very scary. I am 30 ahead that I haven't even shown. All illustrated. I'm just having such a great time doing this stuff. So they asked me when I came here, what were my prerequisites for writing a book? And it's got to be simply, if I say I'm going to write it, if it takes 15 years, I've had books take that long, I'm going to finish. And the other one is there can't be another book. There can't be another book on this subject. I like subjects that have never been touched, where you have the challenge of going back and digging and digging and bringing this to life. And the rule I have is if, let's say, Tom Sawyer or Mark Twain came back today, they would say, how did he know that? That's my biggest joy. I want to know the name of the dog, in the sixth grade fires that destroyed San Francisco, wind directions, which shop burned, everything that went on. I want to make it as alive as I possibly can. So the way I got this idea, it was 1991, and I was reading, it may have been the Bay Guardian, but there's a little tiny paragraph about boy firefighters back in 1850 to 51, 52, who ran with the fire engines. Well, in those days, this was no street lights, lots of hills, and they didn't grade anything. And these water engines that these firemen carried, thousands of pounds, and there's like 40 to 50, 60, sometimes as many as 80 men pulling this. Well, they couldn't see where they were going. The streets were like quicksand. I even reproduced some pictures from the time of people actually sinking. They had guys riding their wagons and horses, and they were sucked down, and they found them in the spring. That's how bad it was. So the torch boys, and I thought to myself, they carried fire to the fire, running with their torches, and I thought, my God, that is such a poetic occupation. So I can't believe nobody's written this. And then I got to looking, I found out that the city had burned down in 18 months, 16 months, 6 times by an arsonist. So I thought, well, who is this guy? I got to find out. So basically, I'm a true crime writer, and that's what I went after. And then I found out one of these firemen, I read an interview, was Tom Sawyer, who told Viola, I think I forgot her name now, Robinson, I think it is, of the San Francisco Call, that he'd run with the very first volunteer fire department in California, and that was Broderick 1. Well, back in New York, where Tom was a runner, a torch boy, he had been in competition with Broderick. And when Broderick came west to make his fortune, he basically wanted to be a senator. That's what his plan was, and he did become a senator. Tom came along, and an assortment of the weirdest guys you ever saw, the world's ugliest man, heavyweight champs, murderers, gunslingers, con men, just absolutely amazing people. And I thought, well, I've got to write this. And as I'm working, I realized, and we are very close to it, that Tom Sawyer actually met Mark Twain in May of 1863, about 3 blocks from here, the old Belli building, in a steam room. And Twain liked to talk to Tom because Tom knew these great stories, and they played cards and drank beer, and they went out drinking at night. So that was the genesis of it, and I thought, well, this has got to be written. So that was all these years of finding little bits and pieces, diaries and stuff, and that's how long it took. So this is the result. And I took out, because I do overdo stuff, 40,000 words. Can you imagine? So that's how I sort of overshot my mark, but I do love it. It's just the most fun. And I guess I could read you some now if you'd like. Okay, sure. This may take a second. I have never read in public before. So I'll start with a quote from Tom Sawyer. And this is an interview. It was Viola Rogers, that's right. So here's the epigram. I'll have to read this, unfortunately. "You want to know how I come to figure in his books, do you?" Sawyer said. He turned on his stool, acknowledged the reporter, raised his brandy, and took a sip. They were speaking of Twain, of course. Well, as I said, we both was fond of telling stories and spinning yarns. Sam, he was mighty fond of children's doings, and whenever he'd see any little fellas a-fighting on the street, he'd always stop and watch 'em. And then he'd come up to the Blue Wing, that's the saloon they used to go to at night, and describe the whole doings, and I'd try to beat his yarn by telling him the antics I used to play when I was young. Well, Sam, he'd listen to these pranks of mine and with great interest, and he occasionally take them down in his notebook. One day he says to me, "I'm going to put you between the covers of a book some of these days, Tom." "Go ahead, Sam," I said, "but don't disgrace my name." So that's an interview with the real Tom Sawyer from the San Francisco Call in October 23rd of 1898. So he gave multiple interviews. So this is the prologue, and this will give you an idea of what we were just talking about with the steam baths. It was the first Tom Sawyer had ever seen Mark Twain looking glum. Sawyer studied the journalist. Loose-jointed body, coarse tumble of fiery hair, long, black, lethal-looking cigar, and soup-strainer mustache. A rangy, lanky man, Twain didn't really walk, but ambled and slouched his way through the muddy streets and back alleys of San Francisco. His normal dress was careless and disheveled. His clothes were unbrushed and freckled with tobacco, though at this moment he was nude, his chest a forest of matted hair, with one leg lolling from the arm of a chair. Twain's eyes glinted like an eagle's beneath ranging, sopping brows. On this rainy afternoon in June 1863, Twain was nursing a bad hangover inside Ed Stahl's fashionable Montgomery Street steam rooms, halfway through what was intended to be a 2-month visit to San Francisco that stretched to 3 years. The sleepwalking and melancholic journalist regularly went to the Turkish baths to sweat out any dark thoughts of suicidal temptations, which were not uncommon. At the baths, he played penny ante with the proprietor, Ed Stahl, and Sawyer, the recently appointed customs inspector, volunteer fireman, and bona fide local hero. In the clouds of boiling steam, Sawyer was mending his own wounds, though his were from a nearly fatal ordeal aboard a burning steamboat a decade earlier. In contrast to the lanky Twain, Sawyer, 3 years older, was a stocky, round-faced mesomorph. His sleepy blue eyes were comfortable to gaze into. His hair was a disordered haystack, a dark brown shock with sideburns. His chest was hairless and his body smooth, well muscled, but without definition, though he could heft 2 men easily. In comparison to Twain's remarkable soup strainer, his mustache and goatee were unimpressive. Sawyer was not completely nude. He wore a coat of smoke and soot, which, as the 3 men played poker, the hot steam gradually washed away. Beneath their bare feet coursed an ancient secret tunnel, and under that a huge raft upon which the massive 4-story granite building floated. 2 doors down was Hodeling's distillery. 2 doors up was the gold weighing station, and a half a block away lay the blood-stained ground of Murderer's Corner. In early May, Twain had departed Virginia City for a 2-month visit to San Francisco to visit Bill Briggs, the handsome brother of John Briggs, a close friend in Hannibal, and Neil Moss, a former classmate in Hannibal. Twain habitually passed hours at Ed Stahl's posh ground floor barbershop and basement steam baths on Montgomery Street, a thoroughfare he likened to just like being on Main Street in Hannibal and meeting the old familiar faces. The extensive chunk of granite known as the Montgomery Block dominated the southeast corner of Montgomery and Washington Streets, numbers 722 and 724 Montgomery. It had been a gold rush tobacco warehouse, the Melodeon Theater, and now the Turkish bath where Twain parboiled with Fireman Sawyer and Stahl, another good friend. Twain studied his cards and hefted a bottle of dark beer. It was cold and sweaty in his palm. He took a swig. A few glistening droplets caught in his horseshoe mustache, and he left them there. He slumped as he played poker, smoking one of his wheeling long 9s, which reportedly could kill at 30 yards. He became addicted to them when he was a cub reporter on the Mississippi. Puffing, he contributed his own clouds to the roiling steam. Twain bought the long, disgusting, licorice-flavored ropes by the basketful for $0.10, and by the barrel for $4, including the barrel. For his guests, he bought them in disreputable square pasteboard boxes of 200. He awoke 2 or 3 times a night to smoke. He held his cigar poised in the air, took a few heroic whiffs, and scattered the vapor with a long sweep of his arms. Twain had acquired a taste for steam baths at Moritz Steam Baths in Virginia City, And while laboring under bronchitis and a serious cold at the recently discovered mineral waters of Steamboat Springs,